You already know the 5 a.m. thing isn't working. Not because you haven't tried, you have, probably more than once. But because somewhere between the alarm and the silence and the dark kitchen, something in you keeps asking whether this is actually yours, or whether you just borrowed it from someone else's highlight reel. Picture the night before. You're on the couch. It's 10:47 p.m., and you've told yourself 3 times that you're going to bed soon. But you haven't moved, because this, the quiet, the dim light, the nobody needs anything from me right now, this feels like the only hour of the day that actually belongs to you. You set the alarm for 5 a.m. anyway, because that's what the productivity accounts say, because that's what she does, the one with the clean kitchen and the journaling routine and the matcha that somehow never spills. The alarm goes off. You silence it. You lie there, calculating how many hours of sleep you'll get if you get up now versus if you just... And then it's 7:15. And something that feels a lot like failure has already moved into the day before it's even started. This is the part where most conversations about morning routines tell you to try harder. Get a better alarm. Put your phone across the room. Discipline is a muscle. But I want to go somewhere different with this, because the 5 a.m. prescription didn't come from biology. It didn't come from a study on women's productivity or a careful examination of how energy actually moves through a female body across a month. It came from a culture that built its operating hours around one particular kind of body, one that runs on a 24-hour hormonal cycle, wakes easily, recovers fast, and historically had very few people depending on it before 8 a.m. The morning routine industrial complex is not neutral. It was never designed with you in mind, and it has been asking you to perform a kind of efficiency that was literally calibrated to someone else's physiology. Here's what's interesting about the moment you clicked on this video. That act, that specific decision to question the advice, rather than blame yourself for failing it, is not a small thing. It suggests you've moved past the phase where the problem is your willpower, and into the phase where you're asking whether the framework itself is the problem. That's a more honest place to be. That's actually where the useful work starts. Think of the 5 a.m. myth the way you'd think of a shoe that's the wrong size. A shoe that doesn't fit isn't evidence that your foot is wrong. But if you wear it long enough, limping starts to feel normal, and you start to believe that walking was always supposed to hurt a little. The productivity culture has handed women a shoe that was made for a different foot and told them the pain is a character flaw. And so we've been limping, waking up exhausted, starting our days in debt before we've even had coffee, treating our own rhythms as inconveniences to be overcome rather than information to be read. The evidence, it turns out, has been there for a while. Chronobiology, the science of how biological timing systems work, has found that women's internal clocks operate differently than men's, including different average sleep timing, different sensitivity to morning light, and different patterns of alertness across the day. A study published in the journal Current Biology found that women's biological clocks run on a cycle that averages slightly shorter than men's, which affects not just sleep, but the entire rhythm of cognitive sharpness across a day. What that means in practice is that the window of peak focus for many women does not neatly align with 5 to 8 a.m., and forcing performance into that window doesn't expand capacity, it borrows from it. You're not failing to be a morning person. You may simply not be a morning person in the way that term has been defined. There's more. Research on cognitive performance across menstrual phases shows that concentration, verbal memory, and processing speed fluctuate meaningfully across the month, not as weakness, but as a natural variation that tracks with hormonal shifts. When women describe feeling sharp some weeks and foggy others, that's not inconsistency. That's a complex system doing exactly what it was designed to do. The productivity frameworks that treat every day as identical, that expect the same output on day 21 as day 7, are not rigorous. They're just convenient for a culture that prefers not to account for this kind of biological reality. I want to be careful here, because this line of thinking can tip into a different kind of trap. Saying that women's rhythms are different is not the same as saying women should opt out of ambition, structure, or early mornings entirely. Some women genuinely are larks. They wake easily, think clearly before 6 a.m., and find that morning quiet genuinely energizing. The point isn't that 5 a.m. is wrong for everyone. The point is that it has been sold as universally correct, as morally superior, as the price of success. And for a significant portion of women, that prescription is not just ineffective, it's actively destabilizing. You cannot build consistent energy on a foundation that works against your biology, any more than you can build strength by training injured. The verdict you've been handing yourself, that you're undisciplined, that you lack follow-through, that you just need to want it more, that verdict is not supported by the data. The data suggests you've been trying to run a program on hardware it wasn't written for. Failure to run is not the same as hardware failure. It is a compatibility problem, and compatibility problems have different solutions than discipline problems. And here's where the systemic piece matters, because this isn't just about individual biology. The pressure to be up early, to have already worked out and meditated and planned the day before your household wakes, falls disproportionately on women, and particularly on women who are also caregivers. The mental load research is unambiguous. Women carry a disproportionate share of invisible cognitive labor in households, which means that the idea of protected morning time doesn't exist in a vacuum. It exists inside a life where the night before was spent managing logistics, anticipating needs, processing the emotional weather of everyone around you. The exhaustion that makes 5 a.m. impossible isn't laziness. It's often the residue of labor that doesn't appear on any productivity spreadsheet. If you're part of our community, the one we're building around evidence-based, honest conversations about how women actually work, you can find the link below. It's a space for exactly this kind of thinking, no performance required. So what actually works? The answer is less prescriptive than you've been promised, and it's more personal than a 5-step plan. What works is finding the 2 or 3 hours in your actual day, not the aspirational one, the real one, where your focus is sharpest and your resistance is lowest, and treating those hours as non-negotiable.
No.
For some women, that's 6 a.m. For others, it's 10 a.m. after the school run. For others, it's the 90-minute window after lunch that everyone told them was a productivity dead zone, but where they actually do their clearest thinking. The container matters less than the consistency. The consistency matters less than the alignment. What also works is permission. Permission to stop treating your body's rhythms as obstacles. Permission to stop performing the morning routine aesthetic for an audience that isn't watching as closely as your inner critic believes. Permission to build something that accounts for the full, complex, hormonally cyclical, responsibility-laden reality of your life, not the edited version that fits neatly into a 60-second Instagram reel. The women I've seen actually build sustainable, creative, and professional momentum are not the ones who cracked the 5 a.m. code. They're the ones who stopped believing the code was universal and started reading their own systems with the same seriousness they'd bring to anything else they wanted to understand well. The shoe metaphor comes back here, because this is where you stop limping. You don't become more capable by forcing your foot into the wrong size. You become more capable when you stop wasting energy on the compensation, and that capacity goes somewhere useful. The mornings you've been losing to alarm guilt and snooze spirals, that's not moral failure leaving a mark on your record. That's energy that was never getting the right address. Reroute it. You came to this video, I'd guess, half hoping for a better system and half suspecting that the system itself was the problem. You were right about the second thing. And the fact that you kept asking, kept pushing on the advice even when it came with a lot of confident packaging, that's not restlessness or resistance or an inability to commit. That's discernment. That's the part of you that knows the difference between a framework that's genuinely useful and one that was just repeated so many times it started to sound like truth. You are allowed to wake up at 7 a.m. and still be serious about your work. You are allowed to have your most important thinking happen after dark. You are allowed to honor a body that runs on cycles, not a stopwatch, and to build a life that reflects that without apologizing for it. The 5 a.m. alarm was never the point. The point was always the life on the other side of it. And there are more roads to that life than the one you've been told is the only one worth taking. If this conversation is the kind you want more of, honest, evidence-backed, built around how women actually experience productivity and not how we're supposed to, subscribing means you'll get more of it. Hit the button, and I'll keep showing up with the real version.